Hello, friends. Welcome to Sacred Disruptions, where the sacred and the everyday collide, where we challenge the disempowering conversations, thinking, and beliefs we've inherited, and we imagine what faith could look like: engaging, free, deeply alive, and fully lived. My name is Alan Wicks, and this is not just another religious conversation about rules and proving who's right and who's wrong. It's meant to be an awakening, an invitation to rewrite the narrative. If you've ever felt like there's something more going on here, you're exactly where you need to be. You belong here. What does being a sacred disruption in the face of fear look like? We hear the phrase live authentically all the time, but what does it really mean? For most of my life, I didn't even know what it meant to live authentically. It wasn't a phrase I grew up with. It wasn't a concept that was emphasized in my faith tradition. Instead, I was taught to fit in, to conform, to follow the rules, to meet expectations, to be what others thought I should be. But something wasn't working. Authentic faith isn't about following rules to belong. It's about being fully who you are, embracing the divine image in you, and walking boldly into the life you were meant to live. But let's be honest. Why is that so difficult? Because fear holds us back. Fear is one of the greatest barriers to living authentically. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear that people won't understand, won't accept us, won't support us. But what is fear really? For many of us, our faith has been shaped by fear: fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of getting it wrong, the fear that if we step outside the rules, the expectations, the script that has been handed to us, we'll lose everything. We'll lose our community, our sense of belonging, maybe even God's love. But here's the problem: fear based faith is not faith at all, it's control. Psychologically, fear is a response to perceived danger. It's an evolutionary tool meant to keep us safe. And here's the deal: sometimes in our experience, we can't distinguish the difference between a potential threat and a real threat. Notice for most of us, in the context of going after our dreams and living our self expression, fear isn't about physical survival. It's about protecting the self from what might happen. In sacred writings, it has been recorded that Jesus repeatedly said, "Do not be afraid." I believe he said this over and over because, like any great leader, he understood that life's circumstances can occur as dangerous, and fear keeps us from stepping into who we really truly can be. Fear constricts, but authentic faith expands. Richard Rohr, who is a priest in the Franciscan tradition, puts it this way: most of us do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. And if we are afraid, we interpret everything through that lens. So if we are going to live authentically, we must first confront, what are we afraid of? Brene Brown, one of the most powerful voices on authenticity, defines it like this: authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we truly are. So, what does it mean to live authentically? Here are a few things that I like to offer. One, recognizing and letting go of fear based conversations. Two, embracing your unique voice, gifts, and purposes. Yes, purposes. Three, being courageous by taking action despite doubt or external expectations. Four, refusing to shrink to make others comfortable. And five, moving beyond your own personal interests. A quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, that an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. So I ask you, what would it look like to be unapologetically you? What would it look like to write that book, apply for that job, compose that song, start that business, take that audition, run for that political office, or have that difficult conversation? Now, listen, for at least 3 years, I said I was going to start this podcast. Yes, 3 years or more. I had all the internal dialogue, all the evidence, and all the reasons why I couldn't and shouldn't. People will judge me. What if I run out of things to say? What if I fail? What if no one listens? And on and on and on. And then I realized that the only thing stopping me was me. I was living in, constrained by, paralyzed by the fear of what others might think. And it kept me silent. Carlton Pearson once said, most of our fears are imaginary. The enemy is not out there, it's in our minds. So I took action. I started this podcast. And even now, as I record this, I can still hear the voices of doubt. But here's what I'm learning: fear doesn't disappear. You just stop letting it run the show. Now, let's bring this to you. What are you afraid of? What is fear keeping you from doing, creating, or becoming? Let's get real for a moment. When was the last time you wrote a song, painted, or danced without caring how it looked? When was the last time you took a risk on yourself? When was the last time you showed up fully as you without filtering, shrinking, or hiding? Listen to this quote by Theodore Roosevelt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement? And who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat? What if the life you're longing for is waiting on the other side of that fear? I want to let you know that throughout history, faith has evolved from rigid structures of fear to the radical, transformative love of God. And that same transformation is available to us today. We are not meant to be afraid. We are not meant to hide. We are meant to step boldly into who we are, trusting that the divine is not against us, but for us. No matter what you heard, the divine is not against you, but for you. So here's my challenge to you. One, identify your fear. Name it, write it down. Two, ask yourself, is this fear real or is it imagined? Three, imagine what your life would look like if you lived authentically. Four, take an action, just one this week, that moves you into that direction. Because the most radical thing you can do is to live fully, boldly, and unapologetically. This conversation doesn't end here because the sacred is never finished disrupting us. Faith is not about finding the perfect answer. It's about leaning into the questions, embracing the mysteries, and discovering what's possible when we step outside of thinking that disempowers. The sacred is already at work in your life. The question is, will you let it disrupt you in the best way possible? I want to hear from you. Where is the sacred calling you to disrupt what no longer serves you? Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, X, and Threads at Alan D. Wicks to share your thoughts. And if this episode sparks something in you, pass it on to a friend. These conversations are meant to be spread. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Until then, keep asking, keep seeking, keep living the sacred disruption. See you next time.